With the WINN FM News, I am Kevin Brown.
And I am Yulana Weeks.
Our top stories. Police address fake news amid rising concerns over social media misuse in St. Kitts and Nevis.
Lynch Caribbean Brokers discusses insurance benefits with the farming and fisherfolk community within the region.
Drug seizures in St. Kitts and Nevis for 2024 and early 2025 highlight ongoing law enforcement efforts.
The journey to a safer and more connected Cockleshell Bay begins.
China floats consultations and negotiations between Guyana and Venezuela. Drug seizure in St. Lucia at Korea Company underscores ongoing smuggling issues. Internationally, no global recession despite U.S. tariffs, says the International Monetary Fund. Now, the details. Authorities in St. Kitts and Nevis have issued a strong response to the spread of fake news on social media platforms, warning of the dangers to public safety and personal reputations. This comes after a recent incident in which an image circulated online falsely claimed a minor had died by suicide due to bullying. Police have confirmed that the report was entirely fabricated. In an official statement, the police clarified, quote, "We did not receive any official report of this nature at any of the police stations in St. Kitts and Nevis. We continue to encourage the general public to be mindful that social media, like all things available for our usage and enjoyment, should be used responsibly. Further, the dissemination of information, whether fact or fiction, for the purposes of maligning another individual or inducing a panicked atmosphere in the community are offenses for which one can be held liable, whether by the police or the aggrieved party," end quote. Such acts fall under the scope of the Unlawful Communications section of the Electronic Crimes Act of St. Kitts and Nevis. These provisions highlight the government's commitment to holding individuals accountable for using online platforms to spread false or harmful information. Prime Minister the Honourable Dr. Terence Drew also addressed the issue of fake news during a recent broadcast of the Roundtable, expressing his frustration over the misuse of social media and the rise of bloggers posing as legitimate news outlets.
Fake news has become a global phenomenon, and it has not escaped St. Kitts and Nevis. There are bloggers in St. Kitts and Nevis who portray themselves as legitimate persons. I would like to call on the Media Association to put out a press release to say who are legitimate persons who are registered with that association.
In his remarks, Prime Minister Drew emphasized the importance of transparency, accountability, and media integrity. He also announced the forthcoming legal action against individuals he claimed have defamed him online.
I will be suing two people. One should get their first suit today. I will not call the name yet because I want to see if my lawyer has sent it. So there will be two who will be sued. One today and the next one tomorrow. I'll put it on my Facebook when the suit would have been delivered. I am not playing with people anymore. It is not right that you can just defame me because I'm the Prime Minister. Criticize me if you want to criticize me, but don't defame me. When you defame people, defamation is a criminal act, or it is, let me put it this way. If it's not a criminal act, I guess I have to look at the law and see, but you can be held responsible for seeking to defame people. Just because you have access to a Facebook, you just can't talk about people like that.
Glenn Bart, first Vice President of the Media Association of St. Kitts and Nevis, echoed the Prime Minister's concerns and affirmed the association's stance on media legitimacy.
I just want to make a quick comment on the matter that was raised in fake news. And I speak in the capacity of being the first Vice President of the Media Association of St. Kitts and Nevis. Right. And just this morning, in the last couple of days, actually, we have been aware of a publication that has been going around, which is fake news, AI generated. And I just want to say that in terms of, we will have a statement coming out soon.
Yes.
But in terms of membership, I just want to say categorically that entities that are not properly registered in the Federation, legally registered, cannot access membership in the association.
Thank you.
So a particular publication that you've mentioned is definitely not part of the Media Association.
Prime Minister Drew then confirmed the association's position.
So you're saying that Times Caribbean and SKN Times are not part of the Media Association?
That's correct.
Correct. Thank you very much, and I hope that all of our people would have heard that.
This unified front from the government and the Media Association underscores St. Kitts and Nevis's dedication to combating the harmful impact of fake news while upholding the democratic principles of free speech and responsible journalism. The government continues to emphasize the importance of ethical media practices in maintaining public trust and fostering accurate, fact-based public discourse.
Heartbreaking images of damage and destruction in the farming and fishing community from the impact of natural disasters in the region have highlighted the need for insurance coverage. As the Caribbean region prepares for the transatlantic hurricane season, representatives from Lynch Caribbean Brokers traveled to St. Kitts to offer potential insurance plans to farmers and the fisherfolk community. The sessions were held on April 14 in St. Kitts and April 16 in Nevis. The insurance plans are designed to enhance resilience against the impacts of climate-related disasters, particularly to help protect farmers' and fishers' livelihoods, including productive assets such as vessels, gear, equipment, and ice facilities. The farming and fisheries sector in the Caribbean is a significant source of livelihoods and contributes significantly to food security and tourism, which many Caribbean economies depend on. However, the rapid recovery of the farming and fisheries sector after a disaster is critical for the food security of many countries. Therefore, any mechanism supporting a quick recovery will contribute significantly to lessening the overall impact of the disaster. The Lynch Caribbean Brokers initiative is not limited to St. Kitts and Nevis, but is making waves across the region, including Dominica, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, St. Lucia, Barbados, Grenada, and Guyana. Hurricanes Dorian, Irma, Maria, and Beryl, and the volcanic eruption of La Soufrière in St. Vincent and the Grenadines are recent examples of natural disasters' destructive power. For example, Hurricane Beryl, unleashed on the Grenadines archipelago in July 2024, caused a complete devastation and destruction of the agricultural and the natural environment, leaving no vegetation anywhere on the islands. The mangroves were destroyed, and the boats and the marinas were significantly damaged. In Barbados, the scene at the boatyard in the capital, Bridgetown, showed vessels mangled together, many of them cracked and others sunken, wiping out entire family incomes. A report from Barbados revealed that approximately 75% of the active fleet was damaged, with 88 boats destroyed. Following the volcanic eruption in St. Vincent on April 9, 2021, the total damage and losses sustained by the crops, livestock, apiculture, fisheries, and forestry sectors was estimated at over EC 142 million. In the red zone, 100% of vegetable crops and 60% of the 2021 arrowroot crop were lost, disrupting the livelihoods of many farm families and communities. There was also widespread damage to leafy vegetables reported across the country. Beyond the devastation, some people of the farming and fishing communities were placed between a rock and a hard place, as they lacked the finances to recover and had no access to insurance to help rebuild their lives, thus emphasizing the critical importance of insurance coverage.
St. Kitts and Nevis continues to demonstrate a strong commitment to combating illegal drug trafficking and cultivation, as evidenced by reported drug seizures for the year 2024 and the first quarter of 2025. The Royal St. Christopher and Nevis Police Force, in conjunction with customs and other enforcement agencies, has made significant strides in intercepting illicit substances at ports of entry and on land, as well as eradicating illegal marijuana cultivation. The Honourable Senator Iseline Phillip, Minister of Social Development and Gender Affairs, Youth Empowerment, Aging and Disabilities, and co-chair of the Citizen Security Task Force during a press conference on April 10, 2025, shared that the proliferation of drugs continues to be one of the key factors driving crime and violence in the Federation.
Drug abuse was number 4 in terms of the top-rated root causes for crime and violence. And of course, we're in an environment where cannabis has been decriminalized, and I think schools have been reporting increased use amongst young people. But thanks to the National Intervention Team and program through TAPS, I believe it's called, the community policing officers are in the schools and are rolling out that program. So just want the public to be aware that we recognize and acknowledge these gaps. And of course, there's efforts being made with the police to strengthen partnerships and improve community policing to rebuild trust in the community.
Throughout 2024, authorities recorded multiple drug seizures across various categories. At the port of entry, cured cannabis seizures amounted to 740.3 grams or 0.74 kilograms, with an estimated street value of $740, illustrating the continued vigilance at point of importation. Land seizures included a range of substances: 356 grams of cocaine, 109 grams of cured cannabis, and 283 pieces of crack cocaine were seized on land in 2024. Crack prices in Guyana average about $200 per ounce. Assuming each piece weighs 1 ounce, the estimated street value of the 283 pieces is approximately $56,600, indicating substantial illicit trade activity within the Federation. Additionally, law enforcement uprooted 3,884 illegal marijuana plants, part of ongoing operations to disrupt local production and distribution networks. The momentum into 2025 remained unabated and seemingly increased, with prominent drug seizures reported during the first quarter. In March alone, 650 grams of cured cannabis were apprehended at the port of entry. Notably, 650 ecstasy pills with an estimated value of $32,500 were also seized during this period, valued at an estimated $50 per pill based on the recent United Nations drug pricing estimates for countries in the Caribbean. These figures reveal an expanding drug profile beyond traditional narcotics and highlight the challenges posed by synthetic drugs. Although cannabis plant seizures were notably reduced compared to the previous year, enforcement operations successfully uprooted 63 plants in February and 126 plants in March of 2025, underscoring a sustained commitment to agricultural interdiction efforts. A significant breakthrough unfolded on April 6, 2025, when officers discovered 38 packets of compressed cannabis in the Majors Bay area of the southeast peninsula of St. Kitts. The enormous haul, totaling approximately 42.8 kilograms or 94.349 pounds, with an estimated street value of $1,132,188 EC. The sizable seizure marks a critical blow to local drug trafficking networks and is reflective of intensified frontline policing combined with strategic intelligence operations. The drug seizures of 2024 and early 2025 in St. Kitts and Nevis fit within a broader landscape of law enforcement efforts in the Caribbean to combat drug trafficking and associated crimes. The region remains a critical transshipment point for various narcotics, including cocaine and cannabis, while increasingly facing challenges from synthetic drugs such as ecstasy. The combined interdiction successes demonstrate the Federation's proactive stance, leveraging collaborative efforts among police, customs, and defense forces. Authorities maintain that such seizures not only disrupt the immediate flow of illegal substances, but also serve as a deterrent against future trafficking and cultivation. However, with continual fluctuations in global and regional drug markets, law enforcement agencies must remain vigilant and adapt to these changes. The efforts of St. Kitts and Nevis law enforcement agencies in 2024 and 2025 reflect a resolute approach to addressing the complex challenges of drug trafficking and cultivation. While notable seizures have been made, continued focus and resources are necessary to sustain and build upon the gains for the safety and security of the Federation and its people.
Cockleshell Bay, Southeast Peninsula, is a critical gateway for passenger movement between St. Kitts and Nevis, particularly used as the St. Kitts water taxi area. Being the most recently established hub for sea passenger travel, the need for real-time monitoring and rapid response capabilities became paramount. The Cockleshell Bay has always been a major concern, as it is a remote location and is isolated in terms of the activities that occur there. Security had been deemed unreliable at night since the inception of the water taxi service. For several years, citizens and residents had been calling for increased security at the St. Kitts water taxi area. The success of this endeavor has been hinged on the capabilities of a local company, St. Kitts and Nevis Cable Communications Limited. St. Kitts and Nevis Cable Communications Limited was awarded the Universal Service Project contract to carry out work at Cockleshell Bay. The installation of fiber optic cable and closed-circuit camera (CCTV) were considered. The project is a partnership with the Cable, the National Telecommunications Regulatory Commission, and the Ministry of National Security, St. Kitts and Nevis. A signing ceremony was held on March 24, 2025. Ensuring the efficient boarding of passengers, the safety of workers, residents, and visitors, maintaining a comprehensive view of the perimeter area, detecting potential security threats, and ensuring connectivity necessitated advanced technological solutions. The St. Kitts water taxi area, commonly referred to as Reggae Beach, colloquially named after the signature beach bar, Reggae Beach Bar and Grill, has been steadily establishing itself as one of the busiest ports in the Federation. It has drawn large crowds over the years, especially when several major events such as the St. Kitts Music Festival, Carnival, the Nevis Mango Festival, and Culturama are being held. This ambitious journey towards enhanced security at Cockleshell Bay is of critical importance. A prime example driving the need for security is the mass vandalism and break-in of several vehicles between the night of May 26 and the early morning of May 27, 2023. Approximately 10 vehicles were impacted. Several DJs, artists, and promoters parked their vehicles at Cockleshell Bay and boarded the water taxi to Nevis for an event. Upon their return, they recognized that their vehicles had been vandalized. The destruction included smashed windows and damaged doors, and the bandit or bandits also made off with very expensive or valuable equipment. Despite major security concerns, people continue to utilize the services at the St. Kitts Water Taxi Pier, which has onward connections to the Carambola Beach and Pier and the Nevis Water Taxi Facility. The connection also provides quick and effective means of transportation services for individuals arriving and leaving the Robert L. Bradshaw International Airport at early and late hours, and also a hub for cruise passengers seeking excursions.
In regional news, drug seizure in St. Lucia at Courier Company underscores ongoing smuggling issues, DBS St. Lucia reports.
In a significant crackdown on the illegal drug trade, the gang's narcotics and firearms unit, working alongside the Customs and Excise Department, intercepted a significant quantity of cannabis resin at a major courier company in the north of the island. The operation, which took place on Monday, April 14th, resulted in the seizure of 3,000 grams of cannabis resin with an estimated street value of $75,000.
Officers attached to the gang's narcotics and firearms unit and the Customs and Excise Department discovered several vacuum-sealed packages concealed within a shipment at a shipping agency in the north of the island. The packages were labeled as food items, but further checks reveal they contain a dark resinous substance suspected to be cannabis resin, also known as hashish.
This latest incident sheds light on the increasingly creative methods employed by smugglers attempting to evade detection. Just a week prior, authorities made another significant seizure at the Viewfort port, intercepting a separate shipment of cannabis resin cleverly concealed in cans of orange juice within a barrel which originated from Canada.
They're no longer relying solely on large containers or barrels. Instead, they're using small packages and private courier services which are harder to monitor. Concealment techniques are also becoming more advanced. On top of that, the sheer volume of daily shipments coming into the island makes it extremely difficult to inspect everything, especially with limited resources. These factors make it a constant battle to stay one step ahead of those traffickers. I believe that greater support can come in a few key areas. The strengthening of partnerships between the police, customs, and private courier agencies. This is very, very crucial. We also need investment in detection technology and more resources to improve our screening capabilities. Finally, stronger collaboration with international partners can help us track and dismantle smuggling networks at their source.
At this stage, no arrests have been made in relation to the latest operation, but police are actively following several leads. For the DBS News World, Zane Romulus reporting.
China floats consultations and negotiations between Guyana and Venezuela. News source Guyana has that story.
2 months after a Venezuelan Navy vessel invaded Guyana's waters, China has floated the idea of the age-old border controversy between Guyana and Venezuela being resolved through friendly consultations and negotiations. The Guyana government has already stated that it will have no further talks with Venezuela on the controversy, as the country has repeatedly violated the interim order of the International Court and the 2023 Argyle Agreement between the presidents of the two countries. Historically, China has had an impartial stance, offering little comment on the controversy, which birthed out of Venezuela's claims to more than 2/3 of Guyana's territory on the basis that the 1899 arbitral award is null and void, a claim that Guyana has rejected as false. Guyana has since moved to the International Court of Justice, asking the World Court to confirm the validity of the 1899 arbitral award. At the press conference at the Chinese embassy here in Georgetown, the deputy chief of mission at the embassy, Huang Roy, when asked about the recent incursion by the Venezuelan Coast Guard and the border controversy, said the controversy should be resolved through friendly consultations and negotiations.
So for that one, I think so the position on that issue, that is the border issue, is very clear, and we hope and we think Guyana and also Venezuela government can find they can solve the issue through negotiations, and we hope they can solve the border issue through friendly consultation and negotiations.
In recent times, Venezuela has issued decrees and laws purporting to annex and incorporate Guyana's Essequibo. Those moves have been fully rejected by Guyana. In January, Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro announced that Venezuela will conduct elections in Guyana's Essequibo region. The Chinese deputy chief of mission said China remains committed to respecting the sovereignty and territorial integrity of all nations, and as such has steered clear of intervening in any country's internal affairs.
So if you actually follow up the Chinese foreign policies, all those policies, as long as possible, you will see, first of all, we never intervene in the internal affairs of any nation. And then the second principle is we actually respect all nations' sovereignty and territorial integrity.
CNOOC, a state-owned oil company in China, holds a 25% working interest in the Stabroek Block, located offshore Guyana. It was within that very block that the incursion by Venezuela took place. Unlike China, other world superpowers, including the US and France, have not only condemned the incursion, but have also supported Guyana's move to have the controversy resolved at the International Court and preserve its sovereignty and territorial integrity. Last month, during a visit to Guyana, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio issued a strong warning to Venezuela, telling the Spanish-speaking country that were it to ever attack Guyana or the assets of U.S. oil giant ExxonMobil, there will be serious consequences. Exxon is the lead operator in the Stabroek Block with a 45% interest, while Hess, the third operator in the block, has a 30% working interest. Rubio said the U.S. remains a partner of Guyana and will stand by Guyana's side, adding that the U.S. government will not allow any illegitimate threats of a territorial claim by Venezuela against Guyana. Guyana has also received the backing of CARICOM, the Commonwealth, and the Organization of American States, among other multilateral partners and international organizations.
We now bring you these international reports.
The IMF managing director has been speaking, and the global economy is likely to avoid a recession despite the hit to growth from President Trump's tariffs rollout. That was according to remarks made by the head of the IMF. In a speech ahead of the spring meetings next week, she conceded that the stop-start US tariffs plans has fueled market volatility not seen since the COVID-19 pandemic. Meanwhile, some of Asia's major exporters, Vietnam, Japan and Taiwan, have opened negotiations with Washington. Well, let's hear a little more of what the head of the IMF has been saying.
Trade distortions, tariffs, and non-tariff barriers have fed negative perceptions of a multilateral system seen to have failed to deliver a level playing field. We see these distortions in the following two graphs. The first tells us that while in the first 2 decades of this century, the world saw a good convergence toward a low and stable US effective tariff rate, progress stalled in the last decade.
Well, let's speak to Paul Johnson, the Director of the Institute for Fiscal Studies, who's here, as you see, in the studio with me. What did you make of a pretty clear-eyed assessment there of where we are?
Yeah, a pretty strong statement or restatement of the argument against tariffs, of the reasons why what President Donald Trump has done is going to undermine growth across the world, the extent to which this has created enormous uncertainty for businesses and in markets, and the scale of the risks that we all face over the next period. Now, the IMF's central forecast is that we won't have a worldwide recession, but they have significantly downgraded their view about what growth will be as a direct result of the actions of the White House. And of course, there are risks alongside that if the markets react worse than is currently expected.
Lots even now that we don't know, because we don't know how long and where this trade war and tariffs is actually going to go in the coming months. And therefore, we don't know the amount of hit to growth we're going to actually see. You talk about the risks as well. Tell me more about the risks you see in all of that then.
Yeah, what you've described is part of the problem. Companies, indeed countries, find it very hard to respond when there's so much uncertainty. We don't know what the US is going to do over the next few months. So even if tariffs have a positive effect, for example, in the US over the long run, and that's a big if firms don't know what's going to happen to those tariffs, they can't even plan for that. And in the same way, countries can't really plan for how they are going to trade with the US over this period. Now, what we've seen up till now has been wild gyrations in the stock markets, which affect everybody's pensions and savings. We've also seen an increase in the cost of US government debt. This is an indication that the world is beginning to get actually quite worried about investing money into the United States. Now, if that starts to snowball, if we have more, if we have a return to the kinds of tariffs that we had the 90-day pause on, then you can imagine markets going down again very dramatically, and people really losing confidence in what has for a long, long time been the world's most stable, biggest economy, and essentially where people put their money to keep it safe.
And remarkable levels of uncertainty, because you and I were just chatting a moment or two ago. We were looking at what Donald Trump has posted on Truth Social, his attack on the Fed chair. He's really going after him, and people in America are actually openly talking about the possibility of whether Donald Trump could fire him. I don't think constitutionally he can, but he is really going to war with the Fed chair.
Yeah, and it's really quite worrying. I mean, this is another attack on economic institutions, which actually served the US and the world pretty well for a long period of time. If he really tries to unseat the chair of the Fed, that's going to create more turmoil. And of course, the chairman is only doing his job. I mean, their job is to keep a stable inflation rate. Well, what are tariffs going to do in the US? They're going to increase inflation. That's going to reduce the chances that interest rates come down. Of course, what Donald Trump is saying is, I want you to cut interest rates. Well, if his job is to keep inflation down, he's not going to be cutting them, certainly as fast as elsewhere.
The Emir of Qatar is in Moscow for talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin. They're discussing the war in Ukraine and issues across the Middle East. The Kremlin statement said the discussions would also be held on trade and collaboration on humanitarian issues. Qatar has made a series of attempts to mediate between Russia and Ukraine and has helped arrange the return of children from both countries who were separated from their parents during the war. Over to Yulia Shapovalova. She's in Moscow. Yulia, look, I mean, I've talked about all of the issues that draw these countries together, but I wonder from Moscow's perspective, what is the significance of this meeting and the significance of the relationship with Qatar, particularly now?
Of course, it is very significant. The talks have already begun, and this is the Emir's official visit to Russia. So the Kremlin, of course, emphasizes the importance that he says that it promised a serious conversation between President Vladimir Putin and the Emir of Qatar, and the parties are also planning to sign some mutual important documents. And we're just receiving some lines from there. Vladimir Putin has noted that relations between the two countries are strengthening, and according to him, Russia and Qatar have enough interesting projects. Both countries are developing them also in the gas sector, while the Emir of Qatar also emphasized how Qatar values the relations between the two countries, that he highly values the current level of relations with Russia, and mentioned the subject of investment cooperation, including in the healthcare sector. And we're also hearing from the Kremlin, and it says that Qatar can become a place for negotiations between Russia and the United States about the future of the Ukrainian settlement, apart from the humanitarian spheres and a number of key topics on the international agenda. So they are also going to discuss not just the Ukrainian conflict. And as you mentioned, of course, Qatar has been mediating between Russia and Ukraine, helping to return children from both countries who were separated with their parents, with their families, and also they're going to discuss the situation around the Iranian nuclear program by political and diplomatic means. So, of course, the talks are underway, and we'll bring more as they progress.
Elders from Zamzam camp being questioned by fighters from the Rapid Support Forces, or RSF. Explosions and gunfire can be heard in the background during the attack on the camp for displaced people on Friday, April the 11th. There are reports of widespread looting, killing and rape. The paramilitary group laid siege to Zamzam over several days, saying taking control of it was a military objective.
God is great, God is great. They are falling like sacks. Either we win or we are killed. From inside Zamzam, today the 11th of April, from within the Zamzam military base.
Aid agency Relief International issued a statement saying that on the first day of the assault, 9 of its employees, doctors and medical staff, were killed. The burning of the camp was so extensive that it could be seen by NASA satellites usually used to monitor forest fires. Starting on Friday the 11th, the number of fires grows over the next few days, destroying most of the camp and displacing more than 400,000 people who have little left and nowhere to go. Organisations have warned the effects of this conflict will last years, with a dramatic impact on the population that will be generational.
Is that even if tomorrow all the parties involved, they sign a peace treaty and peace comes to Sudan, the effects, the humanitarian consequences, the emotional consequences will go on for a long time. And this is still something we need to be prepared for. It's not just the emergency response, but how can we already start looking into the longer term effects of sexual violence and other humanitarian consequences.
The battle for control between the RSF and the army, now in its 3rd year, shows no sign of slowing. Although government forces have regained control of the capital Khartoum, the paramilitary group is strengthening its grip on the Western Darfur region, and it's Sudan's civilians who are paying the price. Alex Katopoulos, Al Jazeera.
You were listening to the WINN FM 98.9 newscast. Our top stories were: police address fake news amid rising concerns over social media misuse in St. Kitts and Nevis.
Lynch Caribbean Brokers discusses insurance benefits with the farming and fisherfolk community within the region.
Drug seizures in St. Kitts and Nevis for 2024 and early 2025 highlight ongoing law enforcement efforts.
The journey to a safer and more connected Cockleshell Bay begins.
China floats consultations and negotiations between Guyana and Venezuela. Drug seizure in St. Lucia at Courier Company underscores ongoing smuggling issues. Internationally, no global recession despite U.S. tariffs, says the International Monetary Fund. Thank you for listening.